So we are going to begin our meeting of the board for June 9th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Roll call, let it be shown that all members are here, and we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and then a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I am just going to make a mention that we lost one of my best friends and one of our awesome principals, Chad, this week. So I hope he's going to send us some unicorn glitter down from up there. And I just wanted to mention that he is already sorely missed. Okay, thank you.
I move that the governing board adopt the agenda with the exception of moving item 2B prior to 2A.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Ah. Well, Dr. Finch, you're up.
I'm up. As superintendent of the Deer Valley Unified School District, I wanted to take a few moments to relay DVUSD's commitment regarding social equity and justice for our students and staff of color. Specifically, I would like to challenge our school system to continue to work together for the betterment of our African American community. The recent events taking place in Phoenix and across the country, following the devastating and senseless death of George Floyd, makes us feel pain and grief for Mr. Floyd's family. Since his death, we have seen a massive wave of outrage, protests, and eventually hope for a brighter future. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others?" For the Deer Valley Unified School District, it is our responsibility to make sure we are being true to the words we use in our core values and our mission. We do not stand for racism or inequality in any form. Our first core value is respect, treating others with dignity. Are we treating our Black and minority students and staff with dignity each day? We must. Our mission in Deer Valley is to provide extraordinary opportunities for every learner. Are we providing access to every opportunity, increasing the probability of success? We must. DVUSD commits itself to the success of our African American students, staff, and families of color. We want all of our students to succeed and work every day towards that end. DVUSD is committed to stand against those forces that go against this mission of lifting others up for a brighter future. We need to ask ourselves every day, do our actions achieve our mission for our students and staff who feel disconnected to our school and community? This is the time to make sure that our words and actions align for the future success of our minority students and families within our Deer Valley community. DVUSD is a hashtag extraordinary district. Let us make sure we are committed to continue to be the source of safety, opportunity, and success for our African American students, staff, and families of color. When we work together against racism and injustice, we will become a stronger community with a brighter future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Finch. Did you have anything else you wanted to?
Sure. I met yesterday with Director Faust, Superintendent Hoffman, and Dr. Chris and Governor Ducey with the 16 other superintendents. It's what we've been doing for the last couple of years. Had a great opportunity to ask them questions, what they were thinking, where we're going, where they think we are going. And I would like to make a couple observations. One is it's neat to see Superintendent Hoffman working with Governor Ducey. As you know, one's an R and one's a D, and to see them working together is unusual. And they work and are on the same page, which is great for schools. So that was a positive part of it, for sure. The second thing that they both are on the same page with is that they want to do everything in their powers. Obviously, the COVID may have a different say, but they want to open schools. So I think it's obviously one of the major vehicles for our economy. So they are going to do everything in their powers to give us the tools we need. For example, which we've shared here, regulations that need to change, legislation that maybe needs to be put into motion. Budget is obviously a big one. And so, but what was nice to hear, superintendent after superintendent that spoke, and they were from all over the state, from our Native Americans up north to all the way south to the border, everything in between. There were superintendents from all regions, and every single situation or example that we brought to them of where we need help, they said we're on it. They didn't say we can't do that, and so that was good to hear as well. Obviously, as time marches on, we'll learn a little bit more on our death rates and hospitalization rates and those kinds of things, which may have be one of the bigger variables on our opening. So, but it was nice to see them working together. That's my observation. Thanks.
Oh, I meant to say thank you. Ms. Tweedy?
No report.
Mrs. Reed?
Sorry. Thank you. I had an opportunity. Normally, we are up in Flagstaff for a retreat for the Arizona School Board Association, but due to COVID, our conference was rescheduled to be a teleconference. And so they've broken it up into a couple of different sessions. And the first session was last week. And so I was able to participate in that and hear some good information from the School Board Association, and looking forward to the one that we have next week. I just wanted to say thank you to all of the parents who have been sending emails regarding their thoughts and feelings and recommendations for school opening next year for COVID. I appreciate that they're engaging in the process. I think as an elected official, especially as a school board member, sometimes it's hard to always get parents to engage with you. And so I'm thankful that we do have parents that are doing that, and that they're also very aware that we have a hard decision to make, and they know that we do, and they're standing with us and have pledged to do whatever they can to help support the decision we're making. So I appreciate that. And then just briefly, with the current state of affairs in Arizona and across the country, with this, I want to stay in our lane of education and know that we have a very strong responsibility to make sure that we're providing an equitable education for every student that's in our district, regardless of race, religion, sex, gender, sexual identity. These are our students. We love our students, and we do everything that we can for them. But I also know that being a minority, there is a little bit of a concern that sometimes our minorities are a couple of steps behind naturally. And I believe that education is the greatest equalizer. And so I don't take that responsibility lightly when I know that we have achievement gaps, and we hear about them at the state and national level. And so moving forward, I'd like to better understand what our achievement gaps and our achievement opportunities are amongst our student populations, so that we can really, as a district and individual schools, look at where our students are, so that we can make sure that we're providing all of the necessary resources to help them where we know that they could be. So I'm excited for the opportunity to continue to learn. Over the last 2 weeks, I've done a lot of listening. I haven't been very active on social media because I've just wanted to listen to what our parents and our students were saying. And I'm thankful for the ways that they have chosen to engage in the process. I'm proud of our students who chose to walk in the Black Lives Matter protest next to Mountain Ridge High School. I heard lots of stories and saw lots of pictures, and am proud that they felt compelled to do that and were able to do that in a constructive way. And I look forward to the opportunities where we might be able to help them to funnel their enthusiasm for social rights, to be able to continue that conversation at their school level and at their district level. So that is it, Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you. Ms. O'Brien, go ahead.
I want to thank Dr. Finch for his statement, and also say that I had a chance to attend the Summer Leadership Institute for Arizona School Boards Association, albeit via webinar this time, so a little bit different, but it went off without a hitch, which is interesting when you have about 250 people online, as I'm sure you all are aware of since what you've been doing. I look forward to the upcoming session as well. The other thing that the Arizona School Boards Association Board of Directors had their normal summer meeting and had a discussion about the different ways we as board members could be providing resources to each other and having some of those difficult and courageous conversations around equity and providing the education that our students need and meeting them where they're at. So I'm looking forward to some great resources coming out of ASBA for our board members and having those courageous conversations. And based on Dr. Finch's statement tonight, I look forward to working with my fellow board members and cabinet on having some courageous and difficult conversations about what our data is in our district and what we can be doing to help maybe better meet those needs and look at what resources that we can provide if we're not providing them. And if we're doing a great job, then I want to celebrate that and find the areas where we can improve. So I look forward to doing that with all of you. And again, just thank you for all the hard work, because this is 2020. I'm not sure there are really great words to describe what kind of year it has been. Challenging, with lots of room for opportunity and improvement. So thank you for all that you all are doing in this room and everybody in the staff in the community.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Ms. Frank?
Well, those weren't the words I saw on social media that were used to describe 2020, but you used very eloquent words, so thank you, Mrs. O'Brien. So it's nice to be here in person and not just a disembodied voice over the phone. And I don't want to give a...
Hold on a minute. Turn her up, Mrs. O'Brien.
Can you hear us now? So I don't want to give a long board report because I know we have a lot to go over. I did also receive quite a few emails from parents with concerns about some of the guidelines that ADE released. And of course, I read them too. And the teacher part of my brain was screaming, "Masks on kids all day long? What universe did you guys come from? We can't even keep masks on adults at Sprouts. Who are you kidding?" And things like, students in rows all facing forward, not working in cooperative groups. I'm like, well, there went all of my lesson plans that I ever wrote. So I do understand those concerns. I also see case counts going up and hospitalization going up. So I just want to say to the parents that it's going to be a real challenge to balance what we know makes good teaching and good education and an exciting classroom with the needs that are being forced upon us by this pandemic. So I can't pretend to have all the answers, but we're going to do our best, and everyone in the room is going to do their best to provide the best education we can, as well as keeping our students safe. So I did want to respond to that. I would like to thank Dr. Finch for his comments in his report, and I debated whether or not to make any comments about the recent events that we've seen in Minneapolis and across our country. In many ways, this is very personal for me. I went to school during the civil rights era in the 1960s. I know I don't look that old, but it's true. And I had a very interesting experience in my school years, elementary, actually all the way through high school. in that I attended a school that by the time I graduated was 95% African American. Because as the families of color moved in and the white families moved out, my parents said, we don't think this is right. And so we can't move our children. We can't be hypocrites. If we're going to talk the talk, we have to walk the walk. So I know what it feels like to be the only person of a particular skin color in the room, which is not an experience that many white people have very often. Now, my experience ended when I graduated from high school and I went out into the larger community and once again was no longer in the minority. And my classmates went off into the same world and had a different experience. So I am hoping that as you're talking to administrators, and I know you have a lot of social, emotional supports in place for just students in general because of the fear and anxiety that they may be experiencing from the pandemic, but I'm hoping that you will take a little extra training and a little extra time for our African American parents and their students, as well as other minorities. One of the things that made a really big difference for me was that around my freshman year in high school, the school board, that spoiler alert, my father was on, they had a real big problem with the principal. And he was quite honestly rather racist, and the kids knew it and everybody knew it. So they hired an African-American principal who was a great role model for those students. Probably the first time that they had someone who looked like them in an administrative role. But what he did was he made a point of coming back to all of the white students and developing relationships with us and asking us, how are you doing? Are you okay? And it was just a little extra step. He didn't have to do it, but he did. And that made a big difference for me and a big impression on me because I was the minority in that situation. And as I stated earlier, that's hard. So I'm hoping that as you talk to administrators when school starts up, that you will encourage them to just take a little extra time and develop those positive relationships with our minority families because we don't have a lot of minorities here. I mean, if you look at our demographics. So please take that time and make sure that they have those supports because while we all looked at the videotape on social media and were horrified, if you are an African American student, you looked at that videotape and you saw perhaps your father or your brother or your uncle or even yourself. And so that's a different level of trauma that I just felt like I needed to speak about. Again, I debated whether or not to say anything because it, based on my experiences, has been deeply personal. But those are some of the thoughts that I have in making sure that all of our students come back in the fall and feel valued. And I think building intentionally those relationships will be very beneficial. So when and if there are incidents where students say things, that if we have a good relationship with the parents and with the families, that will really help us navigate some very difficult waters ahead. Okay, so I think I've more than used up my time.
It was awesome. And very thoughtful. So, again, for everybody that's watching and listening, thank you for your support. And we consider support no matter what almost no matter what your emails are. Because out of every email, there's going to be a little bit of information that we can utilize to make ourselves better. So I am the mother of 2 children, one being African American, one being Hispanic, and we've talked about this for a long time, and sometimes you get nervous when they drive. My daughter moved to Texas. That was a little bit scary for me. So, and not because she moved, just because, other reasons. But we talk about it every day, and it's a terrible thing for someone to look at you and decide who you are. And then it's a terrible thing to know that most people are going, or to believe that people are going to decide who you are just because of the color of your skin. So I think that I'd like to make sure that we're not only identifying gaps that we have in academics, but really developing some strategies and maybe even I don't know, a task force, so this, so that, something where people can be part of it. Everyone can, all the different areas can be part of it. Stakeholders can be part of it and let you know what is going wrong. Because it's just that important. And I don't think that we're not doing that informally, but I believe that we need to do it formally because we do have people, we're all human. So every organization is going to have people that need to be helped or helped to go away. So however we can do that would be great. We have still going on, we've got Union Park is almost, Jim, complete. Dr. Finch, almost complete. Okay, it's getting there. Um, and then we've got Bel Air's beginning to be, more beautiful than it was before. So we've got transformation going on. We've got transition going on. We're going to have graduations going on. Too bad we can't get Peoria's spots for those days, but hey, that's another story. So we still have everything going on amidst the pandemic. So I think that Deer Valley is going to, and all those that are part of Deer Valley have the opportunity to make it something where we can look back on 2020 because 2020 is hindsight and not look at it and say, it really sucked. We made it this. So that we have months to go. And my last thing is that I'm hoping that when Governor Ducey and State Superintendent Hoffman talk about how schools are opening and that they can open, that they remember that the responsibility of how, when, where falls upon all governing board members. So it would be great that when they have the big headline that says schools are opening, and that's mostly what people heard and figured that they're all going to be rushing in like they did, that they give a little bit more detail, and so the public knows that it's your governing boards that are charged with these responsibilities.
Are you sure you want the public to know that?
I do. I do know.
Should we advertise that?
So anyway, so thank you for everyone at the table and for my fellow board members at this table and others. We have been charged with such a interesting year. I think that the flexibility that we have and the ability to become much more cohesive than we were before is awesome. So thank you. And now we can go to who's next?
The finance report.
Oh, she's over there. She moved.
Not trying to be sneaky or anything, just trying to fit more people at the table this evening.
Oh, yeah, sure.
President Ordway, members of the board, guests, I'm pleased to present the finance reports this evening. We're going to start with the final enrollment report from the 2019-2020 school year. We did end with a 0.1% increase from the last report from the prior school year, which equates to about 45 students. And I think the trend overall is still high school. High school was ended at 10,676 students compared to 10,526 the prior year. I think that in comparison to, we actually lost a couple students in K through 8, and that would be where the net difference is. We ended with 1,068 students in the pre-K through 8, actually. So we hope to be able to keep the trend next year. I know next year's enrollment is a continued topic, but we'll talk about some of those projections a little later this evening as well. Do I have any questions about the enrollment report at this time?
You have no questions.
Oh, I have a question.
Oh, you have one
So have you
question.
polished up your crystal ball yet, or?
No, but I do have a magic 8 ball sitting on my desk. So
Awesome.
I tried, and if
Keep
I
it
don't
out
like
of the
the
sun,
answer,
it
I
will
just
melt.
shake it again. We'll see until we get that yes.
Okay, keep us informed how that works out.
Friday update, Mrs. Frank. Friday update.
Magic 8 ball sad.
Next, we'll turn to the M&O board report for this evening. We've not really seen much of a change from the April report. So for May, at the end of May, we're projecting just a little over $2.2 million in carry forward. That includes the May budget revision that we did last month. And so it's just a net increase of about $33,000. The main bulk of that came in the classified salaries and savings from that line specifically. But if you take a look further down in the report, it was offset by an increase in slightly over the set budget for special education tuition. So those two pretty much were an offset of each other, and so we only saw an increase of 33,000. We will continue to update you. This will actually be the last M&O budget board report, but for the next two meetings, we will have presentation of the FY21 budget, and we will talk about carry forward and any major changes in that number as we move forward with those presentations as well. And I'll take any questions on the M&O board report.
I just like that you said 2021. It sounded really better than 2020. Thank you. No questions?
Thank you.
Who's next?
That would be the COVID-19 report.
That's right. Okay, good evening, President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch. It is my pleasure to open tonight's COVID-19 report. Tonight's report is really the first of three reports that will speak to various matters related to COVID-19. And so once this report is finished, there is a report by Dr. Smith, which will relay to you important information regarding the community survey that was related to our emergency school closure. And then Dr. Galligan will follow that report with information about the summer programming. Okay, tonight's agenda, again, is similar, but not exactly the same as it has been in our prior governing board meetings. We will begin with a few brief sunshine stories and then highlight the night with the work of the Return to School work team and committee. There are fewer department updates tonight, as those will be covered mostly in the other presentations following this one. Okay, our first sunshine story comes from Principal Vivian Hunt in the new Traditional Academy at Bel Air. Principal Hunt reported that the staff had a wonderful 9 days of curriculum training. Teachers were excited and are looking forward to delivering instruction and establishing great relationships with the kids. One of her fifth grade teachers, Mrs. Claire Westbury, was so excited after one of the trainings that she created all of her lessons for the first quarter, and that's her in that picture.
Our second sunshine story features the wonderful work that our teachers across the district have done, engaging with respect to the Teacher Clarity Playbook and how do we teach clearly for kids. 180 teachers were trained by district trainers, and 99% of those teachers reported that it was extremely beneficial and that it will transfer to their classrooms in the fall, which is one of the greatest things we can have. I have two quotes that I want to share with you from two different teachers. This has been such a gift of time and money to front load our new standards curriculum map, social studies and science with the reading and writing. We also set up a team drive and all the amazing things we're working on now to share with others across our school. The second teacher said, this training and time with the team helped me understand my role as a special education teacher within a grade level and or the content specific professional learning community. I understand it so much more now. We're very proud of all of the teachers across every single school who participated in this training.
Thank you, Dr. Galligan. And our third sunshine story comes from Ms. Jenna Moffett.
So our third sunshine story focuses on our DVUSD district office reception team. Shirley Clark and Frances Service, whom I sure you know, these wonderful ladies. We opened up the district office to the public this last week, and this is unique territory. As you all know, the COVID virus is a novel experience in many ways, and that includes opening up to the public. These wonderful ladies do make it their mission to make others happy. During the school closure, I do want you to know that Frances Service, the lady on the right, issued over 1,400 DV stars in an effort to encourage everyone, employees across the school district. So we're so proud of her. And if you ever walk through, which I know you do, the lobby area, it has her own flair. As the seasons go by, she likes to make it as cheerful as possible. And that includes social distancing experiences. So you'll see her posters she put in place. They came in early. They designed the office and how they felt that they could manage it best. They have shared their ideas with the high school front office teams as they prepare to open. And the last thing that I'd like to highlight that I think is so useful and shows you how proactive they are is they've created a Google Doc where they are placing all questions that are coming in from the public in order to educate this team as we prepare for question and answers for the public. So we very much appreciate these two ladies.
Thank you, Jenna. So the centerpiece of tonight's COVID-19 presentation is the update on the Return to School work team. This team is the task force that was referred to in the parent updates that were sent on June 1st and June 8th. This work team is comprised of more than 30 district employees representing all aspects of operations, such as curriculum and instruction and assessment, food and nutrition, transportation, and community ed, just to name a few. This overall work team is broken down into 3 smaller sub-work teams, which are displayed on the screen. Beginning on the left, the Return to School Safely sub-work team is chaired by Mr. Miglarino and myself. The Return to School Learning is chaired by Dr. Gail Galligan. And the third sub-work team, Return to Work, is chaired by Ms. Jenna Moffett. The team's charge is clear. We are to draft the Return to School operational plan for the upcoming school year. Team members will analyze recommendations from various agencies and draw upon their own expertise to produce a document which outlines how we will meet our district's mission, which is to provide an extraordinary educational opportunity for all of our learners, even in the midst of COVID. This team has already begun meeting and will continue to do so multiple times per week throughout the rest of the summer. We aim to share this document with you no later than July 14th at the governing board meeting. And we plan to update you periodically each week through the board update and also in the second June COVID-19 board update. It is important to note that we are also expecting to receive a revised set of guidelines from the state in the very near future. This slide visually shows how communication will flow amongst the various groups. Note that the Return to School work team is depicted on the left with the 3 sub-work teams below it. On the far right is the Stakeholder Committee. This committee is different from the work team in that it will be providing feedback on the operational plan. We will be asking members from a variety of groups, such as our parent community, interfaith partners, business partners, mental health agency partners, PTA, etc., to review chunks of the plan and to provide feedback. We plan to notify parents on June 15th as to how they can participate in this process. This has been communicated to our parents 2 times, first on June the 1st and again on June the 8th. This committee will convene several times during the summer to provide the feedback. The placement of the DVUSD governing board in the middle is purposeful, as we know that you two will be providing communication to our teams via Superintendent Dr. Finch. The final document will be put forward by the Executive Cabinet and Dr. Finch to you, the board, no later than July 14th. And again, we do expect several portions of this document to be completed well before that date. Mr. Miglarino, would you like to discuss the guiding principles?
Certainly, with many of the things that we work through, especially when we're looking for input, we want to make sure that the group knows that is a recommendation that ultimately is coming to the governing board for approval. But we want to make sure that there's overarching guiding principles for those efforts. So these are the 3 guiding principles that we've given to the work team. And first and foremost is the safety of our students and staff, to make sure that whatever we develop we'll be sure that we hit the mark when it comes to safety, and we will be following all the guidelines that have been shared with us and with many others. The operational plan will also be very student centered because that is our mission. So we will be focusing to make sure that we can continue to provide services to students. Maybe it will look different than in previous years, but it will still be for the benefit of the students that we serve. And whatever we develop, it has to be sustainable, something that's also scalable. And this is probably where we're going to have maybe some of the greatest challenges, is to make sure that we can continue to serve all of the students and follow those guidelines, and that it is a feasible part of the operational plan as it gets developed.
Thank you, Mr. Meglarino. Dr. Galligan, could you address the return to school learning slide, please?
Absolutely. So we actually started today, a group of 25 to 30 teachers across levels, administrators across levels, department folks, and we talked about a responsive return to school learning. And what you'll see here is how we will work through making some determinations about scenarios and paths. So the first one is determine multiple paths for return. Our goal is to identify, based on work that the home learning team did, work that the team that Gary is leading, that overarches everyone, worked on yesterday, with the expressed intent to address the needs of all students. And I think, based on the comments that you made earlier and the statement that Dr. Finch made, the key thing you'll notice through most of these is the word all. When we think about reimagining, because we know that starting in the fall is going to look different than it ever has before. So we want to rethink the way learning and teaching is designed so that our entire district community, families, classified, certified, admin, everyone, has a design that allows us each to thrive in whatever environment they teach and learn and oversee. Revamping, we do know that because we won't be starting exactly the same, that we have to build agile and responsive practices to support all students, again, the word all, and their families in returning to full learning. And the key words there, from my mind, are agile, responsive, and full. So we have to think a little bit differently. We need to be responsive to the needs of each of our families. And the goal is that everyone returns to full learning, not partial learning. And then, of course, communication, frequent communication, both internally across those groups that you saw, as well as looping out to stakeholders, and then externally. We also identified thoughts and considerations that will work through all of the scenarios or models that we look at. And I'm not going to read those to you, but you can certainly see that there are things, and this is not a comprehensive list, but these are the ones that just came up as very most important that we want to ensure we are focused on. And then you'll see in the very bottom right corner, these are really some typical ways that, as we've been doing research and involved in webinars and thinking about what the CDC says and what our governor says, that we might be able to think about scenarios. So return to brick and mortar school with some students, while some students stay 100% virtual. So some come to brick and mortar, some stay home and participate in that. So that's why you see brick and mortar or virtual. Of course, the middle one would be a returning hybrid. So some kids, they come some days and they're virtual other days. And then those other kids come some days and the other kids come virtually. That's a little bit tougher. There are more snags involved with something like that when you think of a system as large as ours. And then, of course, the last one is return to school virtually. Now, these are 3 ways to think about models or scenarios, but there is a fourth, and that would be if in November or December the virus, the pandemic, spikes and the governor closes our schools down again. So we also have to think about crisis planning as well. So That's what this team has in front of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Galligan. So Return to School Safely is the second sub-work team that we will address tonight. This is the team that Mr. Miglerino and I are co-chairing. So this team really faces some of the challenges from the third guiding principle of what is scalable. So when we talk about things such as transportation, food nutrition, screening, those are some of the things that this group will be addressing. You can see here that we look to, if indeed, we do have a brick and mortar option, and so what strategies and procedures can be implemented to maintain school, right, in quotes, as we put it there, but also to maximize safety for our students. And so listed there are just a sampling of some of the questions that this sub-work team began addressing earlier this week. Mr. Miglerino, anything you would like to add to this?
Just that the guidance that we're using comes directly from the CDC, and they have some very specific questions that they pose to us, as we will be following those and answering those as part of the effort of this team to make sure that, for example, that we have hygiene practices in place, certainly disinfecting, things of that nature that you would expect, but also social distancing. And that one of the final list of questions they have is that there's an appropriate monitoring of whatever process and operational plan will be developed. So once all those things are in place, then we feel that we will be ready for the implementation of the plan, whatever that plan is going to look like.
And what Mr. Miglerino is referring to there is that first bullet point about the decision tree tool. And we went over that tool in our last COVID-19 report. So that is in there, and you will continue to hear us reference that over the next 8 weeks. Okay, our third sub-work team is Return to Work Safely, chaired by Jenna Moffitt. Jenna?
So our group will begin meeting on Thursday, and we've done quite a bit of preliminary work, considering we're working already in conditions that others will be preparing to work in come July and August. But an area of our focus right now is under guidance, and we did learn in our closure time that the more guidance we could provide and the more explicit we could be, the better off we were. So we divided our communications, one separate communication plan for site leaders and another communication plan for employees. Sometimes the communication was the same, other times it looked a little bit different. But some of the things that you'll see bulleted here that we're focusing on is the physical work environment. We want to create a picture for our employees for what it's going to look like. And as Dr. Zerbach indicated, we do know that there is future guidance and that things will change, but we will develop a structure, and as I said, have already begun to develop a structure that we can easily adjust and update, and our employees will be able to look at that. Also, we're going to be addressing workplace behaviors. So, for example, they're going to know that they need to maintain the 6-foot distance so long as that is in place, and maintain that 6-foot distance for long periods of time and not come closer for more than 15 minutes and so forth. 15 minutes being new as of June 4th. Before it was 10 minutes. So things we adjust again as we move along. The other thing, the third bullet, I think also comes into place with workplace behaviors. We're having a lot of discussions about the discomfort and the fact that other people might not be following the rules that we have set forth. And so we're going to be providing some scenarios and perhaps offering some suggestions about how you can address somebody that has making you uncomfortable, or lines of communication for contacting your supervisor should somebody not be following those guidelines. We also have created a Google document where we will have a point person for each work site and location who will have access to all of our resources and can be the point person for our communication, and make so that we are able to go back to that site and have a conversation should there be a violation of the process. I've mentioned this one to you so many times, and it's going to continue to be an area that we're going to monitor and refine, and those are the COVID reasons why someone might be able to go out on leave. But there are other processes that we need to be prepared for. So on one side, we will be communicating clearly with our supervisors and how they're to handle employees that qualify for these areas, as well as communicating to our employees how to go about applying for one of these leaves. We will also have cases, we know, where a person may not need to go out on a leave, but in a qualifying case might need to telecommute. And so we're building processes around that as well. And then returning from travel expectations, those really have not changed, but we will continue to communicate those. And they do occur. It's summertime. People are going on vacation and are choosing to sometimes go in areas we would hope that they would not. And so we do have to provide those guidelines when they do return. And then very clear guidelines for when you're returning from being sick. The differences between returning from being sick from COVID and the differences from just returning from having a cold or a flu. And then we also organizationally are developing our processes for responding to COVID situations, whether that be one of our employees who's living with someone who has been diagnosed with COVID, or somebody who has been diagnosed with COVID and has been on the work premises. Some other operational implications, the list is far more exhaustive than this, but these might be point of interest for you. We have developed already a subcommittee that's going to be addressing fall staffing processes. We are going to need to be as sure as possible where our students are going to end up coming to school on day one. So we're in conversation about surveys and different ways that we can learn where students might show up, but it could cause, obviously, some surplus at a location. So, for example, at Stetson Hills third grade, if some of those students enroll online in third grade rather than attend brick and mortar, then we will need to be prepared to have a process in place for moving our staffing around. Luckily, or fortunately, our certified manual does outline some basic processes for surplus, and this committee will come together to start with that and begin to talk about what it would look like before the first student day and what it would look like after the first student day, whether a teacher would need to be surplused into another brick and mortar location based on enrollment or surplused into an online teaching platform environment. And then volunteers on campus, right? So far in discussion, we are not looking at bringing volunteers on campus until restrictions lift. So that's what we are currently communicating, and that could change, but that's not going to change our training. We will continue to offer trainings in anticipation of opening, in anticipation of field trips, and so on. We want people to be prepared for that. And of course, those trainings will occur on Zoom. We are have been in conversation with our universities and our partnerships there. We want to continue to nurture the teacher pipeline, so we will continue to work with our student interns and our student teachers. We'll notify the universities what our opening will look like so that those student teachers are prepared come fall.
Ms. Wright?
So when you think about volunteers, and I think about people who volunteered in my classroom, homeroom moms, and anytime there was a party, especially at the elementary level, it was a lot of parent volunteers. How do you envision that being handled? Because most of our volunteers are also parents, and they'll be coming from outside. So
It's a great question, and that is what we are discussing. Visitors being different than volunteers, right? Sometimes it is just a visit, and I'm not performing a work function for you or assistance of some type. So these groups are going to have to identify whether or not we can bring people in, and what period would we begin to bring people in if the answer is no in the beginning. Part of that being because of contact tracing. The more people that are fluid at our location, then a little bit more difficult it is in showing where we would need to do extra cleaning or who we need to notify that they need to watch for symptoms and so forth.
Yeah, I'm just trying to imagine the social distancing version of a fall party, and I'm not visualizing that yet. Thank you.
Jenna, I just have one comment. While you guys are going through figuring out exactly what you're doing, when you talk about teachers that might be surplused out of the brick and mortar and then be the online teachers, because we know that this portion of online is actually online, it's not home learning. Would you let us know how that training's going to be? Because not only for, well, your side of it would be for the employees, and then your side of it would be for the families and the students, because not everybody knows how to do it on either side. So I just want to make sure that I know you're going to do it, but if you could keep us updated on that kind of progress, that'd be awesome.
Yes, absolutely. And I think a point of clarification too, our intended process on that fall staffing process would to be to develop an MOU. So it would only be relevant for this year, right? And not for a future year, just for this upcoming year. And of any MOU that we put in place, the board approves. But I think your specific comment is what training that these people would receive as if they were to be selected or surplused into an online platform. Is that right? And what that would look like?
Yes, and then on your side, it would be what training would the parents and the students, how would we do that? Because we know that K through really 8, but I'll say K through 6 is not really well versed in online classes as a whole. Just point that out.
Okay.
I mean, Ms. Reed.
Jenna, when you are going through the fall staffing processes and developing that procedure, will you also be keeping into consideration maybe some of the staff members who have health challenges, who might not want to be teaching brick and mortar, who would volunteer first more for teaching online?
It's a really great question. So it's going to be very important for us to be very clear and have grounding ideas in how we navigate those. So currently, that will be done through the ADA process. So if there is a qualifying reason that someone would need such an accommodation, then we would go through the ADA interactive process. And that comes from clear guidance from the EEOC as far as being very consistent in how we do those types of things. So if an employee did have a qualifying reason and we agreed that that was an appropriate accommodation, those people would be placed into those locations in advance.
Thank you.
Ms. Tweedy?
I think my question's for Dr. Z. So one of the questions I've been getting from parents is specific to how come football was able to start practicing, but not other activities like band having to wait till July when football can start now. And I think it might have been dance. I don't know. But basically, activities that aren't football. And so, how come they can't start at the same time in the plans for all other activities?
Yes, President Ordway, Ms. Tweedy, we are looking at getting those other groups started. And so you will hear actually later today from Dr. Galligan about band as they look to start, I believe, Monday, the 15th, with some of their activities. And so part of the reason for some of the delay, Ms. Tweedy, was creating that resume to play plan and making sure it was sound for them. And then we look to start adding in more people now. So they won't be waiting until July. Those groups will be looking at phasing back very soon.
So that would be everyone that normally starts in I don't know who everyone is until they call me because I forgot one. Everybody who would normally have a summer activity of some sort is getting phased in now.
It's not everyone, Ms. Tweedy, but I did have a meeting with the high school principals today. We had a level meeting, and we discussed as a group some of these activities. So another example would be Stugo. Some of the Stugo groups, they are looking to see if there are opportunities for them to come and start some of the work that they would normally do in the summer. So what we did today is we compiled a list of those activities that they stated usually occur, and then we are going to start going through. Now, marching band was one that we already knew of, and so some of those, that planning had already taken place. And so now with the list that they've given us, we'll begin to go through those to see incrementally if we can get some of these group backs.
Okay, and you're going to be including that in the parent communication then, your plans on
Yes,
all those groups?
that's correct.
Great, thank you.
Okay, one thing I did want to make sure that the governing board was aware of were the logos that you can see on this slide, as you will begin to see these more and more over the next 7 to 8 weeks. So when you are on our website, when you see communications that are coming from us, you will likely see one of these logos, as it will represent the body or the subwork team that compose that information. And so we want to thank Michelle Coots and Colleen McNamara for designing these logos for us, as it will help us as we go through our COVID planning. Okay, as far as the stakeholder committee, I already addressed this in an earlier slide. So just as a reminder to any of our parents that might be watching, that again, that folks should stay tuned. So on June 15th, that's when our next parent update is scheduled to be released. And so on that date, we will provide the information for folks so that they can know how they can participate in that process. And then again, some of the constituent groups are listed here that I mentioned before. And so to Ms. Tweedy, to your point, here we go right now.
Go to the next slide. President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch, Kathy White, Director of Academics and Assessment, will share the return procedures and plan that she and Anna Backstrom, our new Fine Arts CIAS, completed for a 3-phase safe return to summer practices for band. And Kathy will take it on now.
Thank you. So good evening, President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch, and the Deer Valley Unified School District stakeholders. As requested by the governing board, I am presenting our plan for the high school marching band practices to resume during the summer of 2020. Are you clicking for me? Thank you. Okay. And so we have 3 phases planned, and will adjust as recommendations from the state and CDC change in flux. Phase 1 will begin next week. Okay, thank you. The plan for resuming marching band practices was based upon guidance from several sources. We relied heavily on the DVUSD athletics return to play plan for a couple of reasons. One, because it was well thought out plan that was based on our district, and specifically our district nuances, and because we wanted the plans to be cohesive and unified. The Arizona Department of Education just came out with guidance for physical education and arts courses. So we cross-referenced our plan with resuming marching band summer practices with this guidance, and found that our plan complies with this new guidance. Before engaging in any of the phases, band directors will receive guidance as well as training in recognizing COVID-19 symptoms and proper cleaning procedures of the facilities, equipment, and instruments. Band directors are asked to develop a schedule of practices, including dates, times, rosters of students, and locations being used to share with the campus administration and plant foreman. Band directors will send out communication to the parents regarding protocols and student expectations. Posted information about safety, cleaning, and symptom awareness will be posted in rehearsal areas. As with athletics, band procedures include monitoring, cloth face coverings worn by staff, signage, and operating procedures for all ill students. Students and their parents will be asked to sign a COVID-19 waiver prior to participation. It is important to note that students whose families do not feel comfortable returning their students to summer practices may have some virtual options, but regardless will not be penalized for non-participation. COVID-19 symptom awareness acknowledgement will be tracked through the student waiver submission and completion of the teacher training. Band directors will keep accurate attendance. New sanitizer dispensers are being installed on campuses, but for rehearsals in locations where sanitizer dispensers are unavailable, bottled hand sanitizer will need to be available. Bands wishing to practice and condition during Phase 1 will need to follow several parameters. Phase 1 will begin next week and continue for at least the next 2 weeks. No shared equipment and social distancing guidelines must be followed. Groups should consist of 20 or less. No more than 2 hours of practice time each day per group. Also, use of locker rooms, instrument storage rooms, and drinking fountains will be prohibited. Students will be required to bring their own marked water bottles. Band directors and staff must wear cloth face coverings. No water, food, towels, and other equipment can be shared. No music stands during this phase. Students and staff will be encouraged to wash or sanitize hands frequently. Specific guidance on protections for instruments and cleaning procedures for specific instrument pieces has been put out by several national music organizations and will be followed. We are requiring flute guards for indoor rehearsals and spit valves to be emptied into receptacles. Phase 2 is currently planned to start on June 29th. This date obviously may shift dependent upon CDC and state guidance. During phase 2, groups of 50 may be present but must be broken into groups of 10 or less. Groupings must remain together and remain in the same location throughout the rehearsal. Some equipment, such as guard or percussion equipment, may be shared but must be sanitized between student use. Music stands may be used but must be cleaned between sessions. Many parameters outlined in phase 1 will continue into phase 2, such as no water, food, towels, gloves, and other personal equipment being shared. Locker rooms, instrument storage rooms, and drinking fountains will still be off limits. Rehearsals must be limited to 2 hours per day per group. Staff must wear face coverings when working with students. Virtual offerings may be available, and cleaning protocols for facilities, equipment, and instruments will continue. We are hopeful to be able to move to phase 3 by July 13th. Not much will change from phase 2 to phase 3, but we anticipate larger groupings will be allowed at that time. The high school band directors have worked with our new fine arts curriculum specialist, Anna Backstrom, to flesh out this plan for marching band summer practices, so they are aware of the basic plan. Training will be made available this week. If you have questions or suggestions, please share those with me or Dr. Galligan. Thank you.
Ms. Tweedy.
Okay, I have two questions, and this isn't directed specifically because it also applies to football. I just want to understand the thought process on requiring coaches and band leaders to wear the mask, if the mask are to protect others. I would think that the players would be more, or the students. I've been in a classroom a lot of years, and I really feel like the students are more likely to get the teacher sick than the teacher get the student sick, and or with coaches. So I guess I just don't understand the requirement to make the coaches and band leader wear masks when no one else is wearing one.
Sure, President Ordway, Ms. Tweedy, for the student athletes, which is going to be very similar for the students participating in band, when they're doing their conditioning and their training, it would be difficult for them to wear the mask given the training that they're doing. And so their level of activity that they're being expected to do would make it very difficult in terms of wearing a mask like that. And so I would assume that for our students in band, going through some of the activities that they're going to do, I know are strenuous as well, and so that would be difficult for them.
No, I get it. I just don't understand how just having I don't know. I guess I watch some of the protocols put in place everywhere I go when they're head scratchers. I mean everywhere, not just, but like at Fry's, the workers have to protect us, but the customers don't. I just think either everyone wears one or no one wears one. It just doesn't make sense to me. But the next question I have, and maybe it's a Mr. Miglarino question. So when we go back to school and these activities are happening, if we're not able to have normal ticket sales and concessions, how will the funding for our activities be affected? Like if they have to play to empty bleachers or something.
President Ordway, Ms. Tweedy, I don't know that we've necessarily contemplated that. We do have a couple no contact options. when people could purchase tickets if they were allowed to be in the stands, and so it's really going to depend on what stage we're in as a state as to whether or not we can have a large group gathering that would allow people to be in the stand. So in terms of collecting the money, we have a couple options, but it would only be if we were allowed to have groups of that size, that we would even have spectators at events.
We couldn't have pay-per-view?
When you do the contingency plans with the budget,
Do that.
can you also explain our contingency plan for athletics if we can't have ticket sales or concessions?
Certainly, we can include that.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Reed.
Just have a comment for consideration. I know that at work we require our team members to wear masks, and they're outside, and so I know that they can get overheated quickly being outside wearing masks. It does make your body temperature go up a little bit more. So I just want to make sure that our staff members who are wearing them know that and that the summer safety protocols for heat guidance, they're a little bit more aware of that, and that they need to drink more water and maybe just prepare more, wear cooling towels and things like that. I would hate for them to get overheated, have a medical emergency in front of students.
Mrs. Frank.
Well, everyone has an opinion about masks, so I'll just throw in my 2 cents and what my employer's doing. The guidance that came down to us from the county is that if you're in an office, you're in an enclosed space where, say you're in a cubicle and you're within 6 feet of another coworker, then you have to wear a mask. If you're in an elevator or a hallway or a common area, you have to wear a mask. If you're walking from your car through the parking garage, that's an outdoor larger space, you don't have to wear a mask. So that might be something to look at with the band directors and the coaches if they're practicing outside, or if they're in a large area. Then to Ms. Reed's point about they are warm, they are hot. So expecting a coach to wear that all day long if they're outside doesn't really seem necessary to me. If you're enclosed and in close proximity then to others, then that's when it does seem to make sense. So maybe that's a consideration.
And
to look at.
I would comment to that, Ms. Frank, that is actually our guidance. And so it's for when the coaches are indoors is when we are having them wear the mask. This part of what you explained too is our rationale, going to Ms. Tweedy's point about the students. So the students are socially distanced. So like in our weight rooms, they are each having their own rack, and so they're maintaining that distance. And so, but we do know that the coaches, they're going to be walking around and monitoring the students. And so that too was part of the reason that we decided on that the coaches should wear masks when they are indoors. But when they are outdoors, we are not telling them they need to wear the mask.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Oh, I kept looking and there was nothing. Ms. O'Brien.
Thank you for making the notations about the students who may not be able to participate at this time. I just hope that I hope that we'll make that very clear, because I know sometimes there are communication gaps. Sometimes I know how important practices are to our coaches and our band directors, and sometimes that gets lost in or forgotten, I guess is a polite way to say it. And so I realize it says it here for marching band. I don't recall if that was iterated in the sports practices last session. It was. Okay. Thank you. I know that I am getting emails and texts from parents who are quite concerned that have health concerns of their own. So this is an important part for our students who want to enjoy their junior high and high school athletic and extra and co-curricular activities, but may not be able to over the summer, or while we're still waiting to find out what phase we may or may not be in when school starts.
Ms. O'Brien, I would just add too that in addition to, we have communicated that was in the plan, and I think your point is well stated. That the need to reiterate that will be important throughout the summer. In addition to that, we have been working to provide some alternate opportunities for the students virtually. So, in place of coming into the school to do the conditioning, that looking at some videos, that we can provide some other digital resources to the students so they could do that. And I'm sure that for some of our fine arts groups that they'll be looking to do some of the same if we have a parent or a student who cannot do that because of a reason that you said.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that.
Because I think now the word mandatory for participation, we have to, both athletics and fine arts has to be a little bit more flexible than the word mandatory.
Absolutely.
And we won't interrupt you. Again, I don't think. Anyway, go ahead.
You good? Okay, so with that, I'm going to pass the baton to Mr. Miglerino for an update on fiscal services and specifically food and nutrition.
President Ordway and members of the board, just wanted to give you another quick tally of where we're at. So over 378,000 meals in 10 weeks. And I wanted to make the distinction here. I looked for a summer color. I went with orange. I figured that was as much summer, just to make the distinction between after the school year. And although it looks like it's maybe half of the peak when we were serving during the school year, I wanted to note that is still more than 6.5 times what we would normally serve in the summer. So the need still exists. Our food and nutrition folks are continuing to provide, I think, a very valuable service to the community at this point in time. And just a reminder that our current plan is that we're going to continue through the month of June, and we're monitoring that to see if that needs to alter in any way. I don't think it'll be any sooner than the end of June. It might be that we extend it beyond June, the meal distribution that we're currently doing. So kudos to the staff that continue to provide all this, and especially as the temperatures warm up, it has been a little bit more of a challenge for them.
Thank you, Mr. Miglerino. And in our final slide for this first part of our COVID update, I wanted to highlight the leadership of Dr. McCusker and the work of the student support staff team. ESY began this week, and they are doing a great job. Many of the limitations that we are facing, they are truly going after it and providing a wonderful service to our students. And so listed here, you can see the number of folks that are involved. We have over 100 students that are attending the ESY. We have 20 plus teachers that are involved right now, and we have other related personnel that are involved. So they truly are doing a great job, and this will continue until June 9th. And with that, I think we've had some questions and answers already. Are there other questions that we can entertain now? Or, again, we have 2 more related reports to this.
I think that what we'll do, anything that we've already discussed, we can send you things that come to us afterwards, if you don't mind the emails.
Thank you.
So please continue.
And with that, it would be Dr. Smith.
Did you throw that at him? Goodness.
See that? Good evening, President Ordway, members of the governing board. I get the pleasure tonight of presenting the 2020 Deer Valley Home Learning Survey. That be the Home Learning Survey. Okay. Yep. So just to give a brief summary or overview of the administration of the survey. Surveys were developed, first of all, by the Home Learning Work Team. The Home Learning Work Team, I think you can think of as the predecessor to the Return to School team. Kind of as we went through the home learning, we had a work team, fairly large work team of teachers, school administrators, and district office administrators working on home learning. And as we finished that semester, we started to transition to the Return to School team. So we did have all types of employees on that team. There were 4 separate surveys, one for students, parents, teachers, and administrators. So we tried to hit all of those stakeholders. And the surveys were very similar, but not exactly the same. They each had three sections: one on academics, one on social emotional items, and one covering technology. This survey was just open for a very quick week or 8 days, May 15th through May 22nd. A quick slide here to show you kind of the response rate. You can see we had about 6,580 parent responses, a little over 3,000 student responses. That's fifth. We just went 5th through 12th grade for teachers. Almost 1,200 teacher responses out of approximately, it just went to teachers. It didn't go to classified. So out of about approximately 1,900 teachers. And then we had 64 of our school administrators respond to the survey. And then I've also just shown the margin of error there. Well, basically, margin of error is just a statistic to kind of show you how confident or what's the range of the actual responses that we got back. We know we have a sample in each of these cases. A sample never exactly represents a population. So the margin of error is just telling you kind of within a confidence interval, plus or minus where we think the population would actually be. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes or just maybe a minute on this slide because I guess I'll preface with I went back and forth to how to put this presentation together. There's lots of data and information out there for stakeholder groups. In between 20 and 25 different components or items for each stakeholder group. So I said, well, maybe I should just summarize it because and then give you access to the data, which you already do have access to the data. And then I thought, well, I'm going to show it all, but I'm going to go fast. So slow me down when you need to slow me down. But I want to spend a second on this slide just to cover kind of how the slides are constructed because they're all constructed the same. Up at the very top is kind of the summary of the question. Okay, so this first slide is about how we communicated about home learning. The actual specific question is actually in each chart. So they're slightly different and many times for depending on the stakeholder group because we asked the parent to talk about their child's teacher, where we asked the student to tell us about their teacher, et cetera, et cetera. But all four stakeholder groups will be in the same spot on each of the slides. So you see the parents always in the top left quadrant, et cetera. And then finally on each slide, I have a quick kind of takeaway or one observation. And I will say with a caveat that this is just one observation of many we might draw from lots of this data. So on this slide about communication about home learning, was it clear and helpful? Basically, was the construct of my quick takeaway on here is that all four groups agreed or strongly agreed at 80% or above rate. Stakeholders were asked about several of the resources that we provided during home learning. This first resource is virtual class meetings. And while a large percent of each stakeholder group agreed or strongly agreed, students found the virtual class meeting slightly less useful. So the top right quadrant, you can see students slightly higher on the, not much help side, but not much. In general, the responses are very positive for this item also. The second resource we asked about was the learning platform. When we say a learning platform, we actually mention it in the question with things such as Google Classroom, Canvas, teacher websites, etc. And this one, I think, had extremely high results with all four groups in the 85% plus range as being helpful or very helpful, and over half of them in every one of the stakeholders saying they were very helpful. So I thought that was a pretty nice response there for the learning platforms that were used and how quickly adapted to using those learning platforms in a lot of cases. The resource on paper packets, in general, was probably perceived as not as helpful. You can see the far right side for teachers and parents both talk about they didn't use paper packets, or they don't know the answer to this one. That makes sense, as we primarily use the paper packets for those environments where we could not get online access or connectivity or navigate for the student. But Even with that said, for those that did use them, a very large portion of those that did use them, so just the first three columns, didn't find them as much help. So there might be an opportunity with our paper packets, or it might be more of an opportunity to make sure we get a good distribution of connectivity and devices, so we don't even have to use them most of the time. And then the final resource were the online resources or applications such as Zern or Amplify or Dreambox. There's a lot of variation on this one, is kind of what I took away as you go from K6 to middle school to high school. And it makes sense to me because I think K6 and K8 would probably use these applications more often, as the high schools especially would probably be more focused on a Canvas course with assignments and other items in that course. But K6 and K8 found this helpful or very helpful at a rate of 74% and 64% respectively. And then finally, teacher recordings were generally perceived as helpful if they were used. One observation I have here is that K6 and teachers both agree in the sense that they didn't use them. There's a spike for the K6, the red bar in each of those graphs, where we didn't use them as much, at least especially for the teachers, for the students, and somewhat for the teachers. This was kind of a standalone question on what the perception was for each stakeholder group about the amount of work that was out there. This one is kind of interesting to me because I think student and teachers had kind of opposite perceptions about the amount of work. And so So almost over a third of the students said there was too much work, but still over half of them said it was about right. But over a third of them said there was too much work as teachers, and even parents and teachers are kind of consistent. Had the other than about the right amount of work, had the rest of most of the results into too little work.
Do you think students were trying to game the system for the coming school year?
I just wonder if
Ms.
you
Tweedy will answer that with a student.
I wonder if you would take that question after we get back to brick and mortar and all the cool stuff that we're going to get back to. If you ask that question, if it wouldn't be the same answer, students thinking there's too much work and teachers not. I mean, it doesn't sound odd.
President Ordway, that's a great point, actually, and it might be interesting to know if this is high or low relative to that for all groups. But anyway. So the next four questions address the online learning environment itself. This first question is about, did you find the environment interesting or the online learning activities interesting? In general, the results do say somewhat or very interesting. There are some down at the not really for again for students and even parents. Again, almost a third of the students said not really. I don't think there's a huge inconsistency here. Still, almost 70% of students did say somewhat or very, and the other ones are pretty high on the somewhat or very also. The next one is, did you find them exciting? So remember, this was developed by the home learning work team, wanting to see kind of what, and in some sense, these are baseline perceptions. Can we work on these and they improve over time is one of the questions. Here we only found that 9% of the students found them very exciting. It's over half of them said not really exciting. But again, I think part of it, you take away the absolute results and say, hey, there's things that look pretty good, things that don't look so good. The other part of it is this could truly be something, hey, we have an opportunity to work on this and move this baseline in the future. And that would be true also in a brick and mortar environment if you ask the same question there also.
You could
The
also
next,
read this as they miss school.
pardon.
You could also read this as they miss school. And that if we're humans, we like to be together. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of Miss Tweedy's point.
Okay. The next learning environment question was participation, the perception of how actively engaged and participatory students were. Parents' perception about participation was much higher than teachers and students. So parents had more of a perception that, hey, my kid's online, he's learning, he's getting stuff done. It said 84% somewhat and vary, where students and teachers were down at 56 and 64% respectively. And then finally, on the online environment, was the online environment, or did the online environment support learning? And in general, this is consistent across the groups. Parents and students were at 76% and 80% respectively, and teachers were not far behind at 73%, who said it was somewhat or very supportive. This next section, we have 4 questions on social emotional supports and resources. And this first one, were the supports and resources useful? Seems to be a high level of I don't know in this one, and I almost have I really actually think it might be more I don't know what you mean by social emotional supports as kind of a educational term, and so there might be an opportunity to improve the awareness of what these supports are and the resources are. However, when they did know the results, I think again when they did know, so you look at those the third and fourth set of bars in that chart, the results were pretty positive. This is a specific question on did I feel like I was checked in on, or was my child checked in on? Parents and students have a much higher rate of disagree or strongly disagree than teachers do. Teachers felt I'm checking in on all my kids. Don't worry about it. I don't know. Whereas you see that the parents, there's a high proportion of strongly disagree or disagree for both parents and students. This one talks about was my teacher responsive, or was my child's teacher responsive to my child's life circumstances? A little more consistency around this one, being responsive to students. I don't that the disagree and strongly disagree aren't quite as spiky or high for this one as being checked in on. There's still some disconnect, though, I think, between what parents and students say versus what teachers say about being responsive to my life circumstances. So there might be an opportunity there for us to work on as a district.
Do you know, on the check-in one, I would just put out there the reason there might be a difference of opinion, because I experienced this too. A lot of times, because the teachers were trying to call from their home phones or their cells, they had to block the number. A lot of people don't answer block numbers. And so from a teacher's perspective, I think we tried to reach out. Um, and because that was unsuccessful, from a parent and a student's perspective, that it didn't happen, because when you have to block your number or risk it going around on social media, you kind
That's interesting.
yeah.
Yes.
So, but you do, nobody picks up blocked calls on their cell phone. I don't either. So it was hard to get through to people, and I know a lot of teachers told me they had that problem.
Were our teachers leaving messages, do we know, or was that part of the, I guess, protocol?
I mean, a lot of teachers I know left messages, but you don't want to give your cell number to have people call you. So that was the issue. So it was very hard to actually reach people. And I know I had that problem myself, but so did a lot of other teachers. And then the calling apps are kind of iffy, so they're not. So that is an issue with the home thing.
So does that provide us an opportunity to evaluate what kind of phone system we use as a district? And I I'll send it to you in an email, but I think that for other reasons related to the usage of cell phones and communication with students and families, I mean, landlines are good in some instances, but in this instance, we've proven, and I think we're going to find other times when our teachers are at home or maybe teaching online or whatever the proper terminology is, that not being able to communicate and leave a message and a callback number, among other concerns related to texting students and texting parents on a private phone versus a school-owned phone. Just something to think about for the future.
Yeah, we used, I would say most of our connections were obviously email and then leave messages that way. But if there was a specific incident where or an issue that they need addressed with a student, then it goes back to Miss Tweedy's problem when you have cell phones. That does create a problem in our current society. There's no more landlines. So that does create an issue. But I think I shared with you before, we successfully contacted 99.3% of our students. We found them. And so that's basically, we found every student that was a Deer Valley student and got the home learning to them, which was way beyond our peers. Now, and to Miss Tweedy's point, though, once you contact them, then maybe some go on paper packets, some go online, some go in a different direction. But that's when the issues popped up, and that's kind of, I think, the reflection. But I hadn't thought about. We had talked about the use of cell phones and the issues around them, and that solution may not be as easy as we think going forward. But
Because especially when you're talking about social emotional versus contact, like, yeah,
right,
I contact kids in Google Classroom or email,
right,
but when you're talking about a relationship with your teacher, there weren't a lot. I mean, I tried twice a week calling people, but there weren't a lot of students I got to talk to on the phone for that reason. And it was more leaving messages. I'm calling to check on you. But I don't think if they didn't talk to their teacher, the teacher may perceive I tried to reach them.
right. I think to Miss Reed's point way earlier at the beginning of the meeting, though, who are the students that we are not contacting or not making connection with? It's pretty obvious who those students are. The students that don't have the resources. So as a district, we have to make a better effort or more concerted effort to reach those students who don't have access, who don't have internet, and that's one thing that we're working on from a city level. I just had a meeting a couple days ago with other city schools, Phoenix City schools in particular, about a plan to address that. So that's something we're interested in. And our problems are 1/10 of the rural problems that are out there, but something to think about, though. Correct.
Okay, so the last social emotional item is about the student and the parents feeling like there's a connection. This slide gets a little tricky because this is where some of the questions don't match up. So the bottom two on teacher and administrator are slightly different questions, but let's focus on the top of the chart, the top charts. You can see that my little takeaway here was I said high school result is perplexing. Probably not a great word for that. I was mostly like surprised that there was a high proportion of disagree and strongly disagree, the highest of all school types for high schoolers. And that was just in my head. There would be a lot more connection, at least in social media and other ways to contact your friends and peers. But that was just me. Down at the bottom, you see that the district admin disagreed. The district office has checked in on them. I think this is a huge. There's like 29%. I think that's probably a huge opportunity for us as a district office. I don't think we should have one school admin that feels like they're not being checked in on personally, and so that's their perception. Now we get into the technology section. The first is about access to devices. I think these results are also very strong for both parents and students. I think this is probably the place to give kudos to our IS&T department and their distribution efforts. And while they're very strong, though, we can always also argue we want it to be zero, agree or disagree if we have to do this or when we have to do this in the future. I don't know why we have 22% of the teachers that disagree with this. One of my original thoughts was it exploratory teachers, was it special teachers, was it? But we know that every single one of our certified staff have a laptop. So my second thought then was, well, maybe they aren't thinking about that type of device. If you notice in the question for parents and students, we specify the type of device: computer, iPad, Chromebook, etc. We didn't do that for teachers. So I don't know if they're looking for document cameras or they're looking for science equipment or what. That was my only other thought on this one is maybe we should be more specific that at least they have connectivity and can access either PD or their kids, etc.
I'm just wondering if it's possible that some teachers have older technology that really needs to be replaced, or does everyone have the latest and greatest?
President Ordway, as Frank, there was a concerted effort to make sure that if they needed replacements or repairs, IS&T put it out there several times that we'll come and do it. People might not have been comfortable with that because there probably weren't as much as there could have been, but there was an effort to do that.
Sorry, Dr. Smith. I also wonder if that question could be related, not so much, I realize the question is written about devices, but it also says technology access. Could they have felt like that was the ability to use it, the instructions, or is there a question later that refers to that?
President Ordway, Ms. O'Brien, that's a great point because we do distinguish devices from connectivity for parents and students, but we didn't that. So it's probably a bad question in the sense that we're asking two things and should separate those in a good survey to make sure they're answering about something specific. So this is the connection about connectivity, but the bottom two for teachers and admin are about PD. The connectivity results, I think, are very similar to the access. Very high agree or disagree, but we want strongly agree, but we want the disagree components to be zero if all possible. The teachers had a pretty high strongly disagree on the PD. And I guess I'm going to say on this question, this is probably one of the first questions where we probably should have had an NA option for them because it might not have been appropriate. I might, if it was professional development around dealing with student support services, but I don't deal with any special ed kids, maybe it wasn't appropriate for me. So I just think that NA might have been appropriate here. And then the second to last question on technology is about navigation. Were they able to navigate the resources used in their classroom? Again, I think results are pretty good. Only around 15% of them disagree, which is still another opportunity still, but I think pretty good results. And finally was a question about paper packets. Paper packets, along with access to technology, are probably our best opportunities in the future to ensure equity and for several of our subpopulations. If we're going to use them, let's make sure they're useful and let's sure they know how to share the work that they're doing on them.
Mrs. Ordway? It's okay. Do we know how many? I know at one time you shared the number of packets that were printed. Do we know the number of students that actually received paper packets in the district? And if you don't know it right now, if we could just have it in an update, that would be great.
President Ordway, Ms. O'Brien, we can get that in the update.
Okay, the remaining slides focus on teacher and admin support. The first one on home learning. and did they get the appropriate information on home learning? This again, I think is pretty good, but I don't get the 22% disagree. Did we miss a group, or did we need an NA option in there? Second one, did they get support for students of art services? And this one, I actually just say it in my little takeaway is possibly needed an NA option for teachers in here. And some of these get a little sketchy as we go forward. Some of them, I'm going to let you do the takeaway. HR support. Again, I think it's the HR support included work assignments, evaluations, EAP, and COVID guidelines. I think very strong for admin. And I think again, there might have been a group that I was good. I had my evaluation done. I knew what my work assignments were. I didn't need to go to work to HR for any of that for teachers. And finally, for teacher support, engaging students, did they get support for PLCs? And then they get support and curriculum resources. We had some really nice comments on the support for curriculum resources from teachers about what CIA offered them and what some of the specialists and coaches offered them in their curriculum resources. And I think to a large degree, these results say a little bit of that. There's probably still opportunities to improve support across all three of these for teachers. Admin support, these are 4 slides for different types of supports. Did they get support for social and emotional items? Did they get support on what, when, and where are important events, on meal distribution procedures, and student pickup, direction, and guidelines? These are all, at least for the vast majority, are either somewhat or very much valued the support. And finally, admin support for return to campus, and then the very last one on the right, that they had a way to monitor the learning management systems for their teachers. Again, pretty good results across the 65 admin that answered this. So sorry for that, for taking so long. Real quick set of conclusions here. I think the response rates were pretty good. They were high enough to make sound conclusions. A lot of positive results. I think in general, mostly. I did have some challenges that popped out, and I mentioned several of them. The amount of work, and maybe you're right, we'll never be able to balance the student, parent, and teacher expectations on the amount of work, but it might be something to look into. Continue to make learning interesting and exciting. That's something we do in any environment, and we'll continue to do in any environment. Ensuring social emotional supports are provided and understood, that especially for if it's education needs that we speak when we talk about social emotional sports, that people understand that that's what we're talking about. Continue the technology support, get those devices, the bad answers to devices and connectivity down to 0, and improve technology support for all teachers. We'll continue to explore the balance of all these things between when we go to make decisions between virtual versus in-person educational environments. And then finally, the full results of these, which I've already told you, but they're on the data analysis portal page for any employee to go and view.
I just have one observation. I think we've done very well on our first attempt at managing our education during a pandemic. So I didn't really mean, I was being serious. I mean, we just haven't done it before, and I think we did excellent. So there's always going to be things to improve on, but I think maybe at some point in time when we have time, if we were to mimic that survey with kids inside a classroom, it might even look the same. Who knows? So anyway, thank you very much. I was being serious.
It's funny to say. It's just interesting to hear someone say, I think we did a really great job in our first pandemic. I know you were being sincere.
Not that we want to do better in the second pandemic, not that we want a second pandemic.
I take a pass on the second pandemic.
All right. President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch. This evening, very similar to previous years, I'm going to share some of our summer academic programs that we have in place. and I'll continue while that comes up. Some of the programs that we'll talk about tonight are community ed, student support services, and Dr. Zarabak gave you just a touch of that at the end of the COVID report. And then the bulk will be our Deer Valley Online Learning Program and the umbrella that they are providing. A few of our programs, 2 that are continuing and 2 that are new. So the first one is community education, and as you read in the update, Science Rocks started on the 1st of June, and it continues 2 weeks, and we have a number of scaled back offerings, but they are still offerings for kids and parents who wanted their kids to participate in a STEM science kind of activity. Of course, we still have our kid stage, which is it's an online actors workshop now. We have 14 kids that are participating in that. That will start the end of June. Continuing on, driver's education started also on June 1st, and this is the first of 2 sessions this summer. There will be 24 students per session. They're split 12 and 12 between the actual simulator and then direct instruction. And then beginning on June 15th and running through almost the 3rd week in July will be our staycation summer camp at 6 campuses, and those are the 6 campuses that we're going to hold summer camp before. You can see that the registration right now is 657, and we're fairly certain that that's a pretty stable number. We started close to 800, and it dropped to that number when we announced that we were going to have our vacation, and it stayed pretty stable since then. It'll be a 9-to-1 student to staff ratio, and our food and nutrition, wonderful people that they are providing a summer feeding program at Arrowhead, Norterra Canyon, and Paseo Hills. As Gary mentioned, Student Support Services started their extended school year this week. We have 104 Deer Valley students who are participating. It is a virtual service delivery similar to what we saw in the spring when we were in that crisis mode, but we are delivering specially designed instruction and teletherapy in that virtual platform. So we are giving kids what they need, even in this situation that we find ourselves. Deer Valley Online Learning Program is our approved AOI. We are continuing with our middle school program, which is typically a blended program. You can see the purpose there is a second chance to reassign to the next grade level for our students going into 8th grade and going into 9th grade. Small classroom settings, one-on-one supports, targeted our 7th and 8th graders, and we have about 45 kids taking 63 courses in math, social studies, language arts, and science. If you remember from past years, in the blended model, we typically have somewhere between 93 and 95% of those students who participate reassigned to the next grade. We'll see if we get that same, hopefully, percentage. Our Deer Valley Online Learning High School program continues pretty much the same as it has. It's a get ahead, make room in the schedule, or recover credit program targeting our high school students. And then we have 5 new summer courses. There are 98 different courses offered. 800 or so students are taking 1,200 courses. You can see that health and fitness are pretty big as far as the kids that are taking those particular courses. The team registered late seniors through May 24th, and the cool thing in a odd situation is that our kids that may not have had the opportunity to walk at the end of May have the opportunity to regain their credit and walk in July. And that's a pretty cool byproduct here. Pathways is also under the umbrella of DVOLP, and that is because per statute, any of our summer programs that we want to put forward for ADM need to be part of our online AOI. And because DVOLP is such a vibrant and robust program, it is able to take on the teachers and the program itself. Pathways didn't change other than it is virtual. Depending on where we are, mid June, end of June, we may be able to build in some kind of small group blended, but at this moment, we are still pretty virtual there. And you can see there's 297 students enrolled across 16 active classes, 32 teachers are participating. It's a pretty high enrollment count for us, and you can see the courses that are involved. I would like to talk to you about a new opportunity that we have this year. The Math Level Up Summer Program is a new summer program being piloted on the Deer Valley Middle School campus, pulling in about 15 to 20 students from each of the 3 grade levels and the feeder schools to Barry Goldwater. The program focuses on building a positive mathematical mindset in students. It's designed to help build a growth mindset in students, and we know that students with a fixed mindset are those who are more likely to give up and believe they can't do math, whereas students with a growth mindset are those that keep going even when the work is hard and who are persistent. And that's part of what this program is aiming for with those students. The 3-week program aims to help 55 students believe that they can learn anything math related and that their intelligence can grow. Math Level Up is based on a well-respected Stanford University professor, Dr. Joe Bowler's work with engaging students in rich, open, visual, and creative tasks to make connections between mathematical ideas. Here's a cool example of that. The uniqueness of this program is that on Fridays, students do an authentic project-based lesson with a guest high school teacher, very cool, that embeds math in the lesson. This Friday's project is an art math lesson with Jeff Davenport. She's a professional artist for 20 years and an art teacher at O'Connor High School. So she is working with this group of children in 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, incoming 7th and 8th and 9th. Our students have received the physical materials for this Friday's lesson through either pickup by their parents or delivery to their home. This year's Math Level Up has a gaming theme that builds in motivation through digital badging, virtual coins, and personal tracking of project. So if you are a young teen, just the thought of earning badges and virtual coins is pretty darn cool. We are in the first week of Math Level Up, and these are 3 quotes from incoming 9th grade students participating in the summer program. And you can see, again, we're working on that mindset and that growth mindset for kids. Some pretty cool stuff here. And this is just in 2 days, guys, 2 days. So very cool. Here's a copy of the game board being used just this week. You can see the different levels, which are the lessons, the spirit days, the mindset survey, the badge board, and students earn a badge. It looks like each picture that you see there for completing each activity. It's highly motivating. One of the incentive for students, in addition to badging and virtual coins, are these amazing business partners who are donating various items for participating students in Math Level Up. And you can see Keywise, Wintrust, Try Young, and Chick-fil-A are all gracious partners with us. One of the goals of this program is to determine if Math Level Up and changing mindset and building a growth mindset in students in those middle grades can be replicated in other middle schools next year. Our next new program that is this summer, that is really supposed to target COVID-19 slide, is a grade 2 through 10 Jumpstart Intervention Program focusing on small group instruction around 3 specific essential skills or standards that are necessary for student success at the next grade level. No more than 5 students work with a teacher for an hour over 10 days to build confidence, accelerate learning, and provide the momentum for students to enter the 2021 school year with increased readiness. Small group instruction doesn't require a whole lot of beliefs and bells and whistles. It just takes students and teachers time with identified students who will benefit and a data tracker. There is a body of research and evidence that indicates that intensive small group instruction can lead to particularly large achievement gains for participating students, especially during summer. The Jumpstart Intervention Program uses both daily formative assessment to inform instruction by the teacher for the next day. It also has a built-in summative assessments in August using the initial DIBELS, RI, and MI as another indicator to determine how much a student may have grown in both a belief that I can learn math and or reading and enter the school year closer to being proficient. All participating teachers will have focused instruction in small groups for their content and essential standards. Grades 2 and 3 are foundational reading. Grades 4 through 8 are math. Grades 9 and 10 are either algebra or geometry. Teachers will also have training on how to use Canvas and Zoom to conduct Tier 2 intervention in their small groups. Grades 2 through 10 will use the STEPS framework for small group intervention. We know that there will be some teachers that may not have had a whole lot of experience in small group instruction, so we wanted to provide a pretty specific framework. As you can see, student time in small group intervention includes direct instruction, a balance of instruction and student application, a strict attention to time management, and capturing and using individual student data to make informed decisions for the next learning step on the following day. The STEPS framework also provides a clear and consistent daily routine and process for learning, and we know kids do better when they have a routine. Jumpstart intervention will be in place at 13 out of 15 of our K-6 schools, 12 out of 14 of our K-8 schools, and some manner, our high schools. 2 of the high schools will have Jumpstart with their own teachers, and 3 of the high schools will have Jumpstart with Pathways teachers. Currently, we have confirmed just under 1,000 students across those schools. Now, we have many schools that have not yet put student names in because we ask them, do not load students if you do not have confirmation from parents. So we have a number of schools that have listed kids and have confirmation, and a number of schools that do not. We've asked that schools have July 19th as their drop dead date to confirm students. So that's just one of our ways to think about this. Schools identified their students that were close to strategic or close to proficient. We know that 10 hours over 2 weeks is not a whole lot of time, and we wanted to get the biggest impetus that we could to take advantage of this. Schools made and are still making personal phone calls to parents to invite their child to participate. A weekly communication will begin to parents next week and will go either from the Jumpstart administrator or the teachers or both. That will continue through the end of Jumpstart, which is July 24th. The goal is for our parents to understand the program and benefits for their child. Similar to the Math Level Up program, Jumpstart will also have student incentives built in, including very graciously our Chick-fil-A coupons for participating students. Other incentives are being worked on right now, which would include books for our second and third graders, and then Scholastic or other vendor gift certificates. So that's our update for summer academic programming. Thank you.
That was awesome. We can now move to
Public comments.
No additional public comments received through our link.
Okay, so now we move to item.
I'm
sorry.
I should have said this before. With the public comments, the way it's set up now, if you have a public comment that does not pertain to an agenda item, feel free to send your comment about whatever it is to your governing board members and or your superintendent. It's not that we don't want to hear from you, but right now the public comments are kept to agendized items. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you. Sorry, Jenny.
Oh, no, that's okay. I'm just trying to figure out what's next. I think it's. You keep talking. Any more you wanted to say?
For old business, is that
Okay, yeah, I was looking at, we had a change. Okay, but that's later. All right, so I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation and approve the certified and classified negotiated language tentative agreement number 69 for 2020-2021.
I second.
Any further discussion? All those in,
I did have a
excuse me,
clarification.
ma'am.
At our last governing board meeting, and then with a follow up, we were talking about the average teacher salary, and it wasn't specifically specified which average teacher salary we were going to use, whether it was the one provided by the attorney general or the one provided by our district. So was that ever decided upon? Because the numbers were slightly different.
I can provide clarification to that. It was agreed upon as part of this discussion that it would be the number that is provided by the district because
Okay.
we can gather that information in a timely fashion.
Perfect.
It also often is the same number that Heather's department provides later for that report that is due at a different date.
Okay, thank you.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
If I may also point out, even after vote, that the DVEA did formulate a process to ratify, and they notified me today that they did ratify the document.
Thank you.
Okay, I move that the governing board approve consent agenda items 5A through 5Q.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so action item 6A, I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to pre-approve the addenda as presented.
I second.
All those in
Oh,
favor?
wait, excuse me. I had a question about this item.
We have a question. Hit me on that, looking at you.
No, that's okay. And I apologize if I think this is the right place. I was reading somewhere about addenda being a percentage as opposed to a dollar amount somewhere. I apologize. I thought it was here.
A percentage, do you remember?
It just said percent. It was a percentage noted as opposed to dollar amounts.
Oh, yes, Mr. Miglerino.
President Ordway, Ms. O'Brien, I don't believe it would have been in the pre-approval, but it may have been. I think there was a section in the tentative agreement in which we added the cross-country.
Oh, it was in the certified agreement. You're right. It was what we just approved. Okay.
And that is typically how we handle the addenda so that we don't have to bring them back for, I'll call it an adjustment on an annualized basis. So it's a percentage of a number that grows with changes to the starting salary for teachers. So so that way the addenda actually grows when the starting salary also gets adjusted on an annualized basis.
Thank you for clarifying that. Even though I'm in the wrong section, I do appreciate it.
You're not in the wrong section.
I'm just thankful you didn't have a question of the 25 pages of pre-approvals. 'Tis the season, by the way, just so you know, there are 25 pages. I didn't count how many are on each page, but we do ask the schools to input their pre-approval for the first semester, and this is the time period that we ask them to do that because many of the school staff in our elementary grade levels are no longer under contract. So that's why the list is so long tonight.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nothing opposed. Moving on to 6B.
Okay. I move that the governing board approve evaluation and performance pay for the Deer Valley Unified School District Superintendent, Dr. Curtis Finch, in the amount of 100%.
I second.
Okay, so, yes, Mrs. Tweedy, I was just going to say that all of the information, documentation, how we got to this will be put on the website as we have put it on the website before. Go ahead.
So, just to explain my vote, the reason I will vote in favor of this is we had 5 goals. They all were measurable. We were provided documentation. that he met each of the five. One measurement was amended because the test didn't take place due to COVID.
There was no standardized testing.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
but then we found another assessment. So, just I was satisfied with the documentation that all the goals were measurable and met, or I would be the first person who would vote no. But no, I vote yes. That's why I would.
And if I
Anybody
could
else?
just add, it is important for the public to understand that they were all measurable goals, and the binder was what, about that thick that we were presented? Yeah, yeah. So yes, we looked through all of that. You're welcome. But it is important for the public to understand it's not sort of an arbitrary. We kind of thought, yeah, he sort of deserved. It was all measurable. It was all documented, and all the data was provided.
Miss Reed.
Well, and we met quarterly to be apprised of the progress that was being made. So we've all known. Yeah.
We have a process, and it's
Yes.
also in. So we follow it closely. Mrs. O'Brien, did you want to say something?
I will say it was nice to have a process where we were looking at measurements for those goals, not just some arbitrary things. So it was a good process, and Dr. Finch and the cabinet did a great job in achieving those goals, and which is all for the benefit of our students and our community. So thank you.
All right, can we take a vote on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
No opposed. It's moving on to nothing. Preview. That would be Jim.
President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch. This evening we are bringing for a preview the Deer Valley Education Foundation Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU. This is an annual memorandum that we have with our foundation. I know that Ms. Brennan and Mr. Philippek are saddened that they couldn't be with us tonight. They did send their regards. There are just two minor changes with the actual exhibit, which outlines some of the things that they will be doing. They have removed the 4-year scholarship for a student that would be. I'm sorry, the scholarship for a student attending a 4-year university in science, technology, energy, engineering, and math. I believe the donor is no longer providing the resources for that funding, and they've made a change to the exhibit that they may provide the science classroom supplies, as they have done so on occasion, but did not want to commit to it without knowing their financial situation. Even with those changes, we do believe that it meets the test that because we do provide a certain amount of financial support and other in-kind resources, office and whatnot, and we feel it meets that test and would recommend this and would be bringing it back for formal consideration at the June 23rd board meeting. So it'd be effective for the next year, July 1st through June 30th of 21.
Thank you. I just want to comment that I miss Charlie not being able to tell us that story. Anyway. Tax credit and fee off.
President Ordway, that will be me this evening. The district is not allowed to charge students any fees that have not been approved by the governing board. We are bringing tonight the 2020 now I can't say it. So you said how well I said it earlier. I can't say 2021 now. That the fee schedule includes items such as the $5 lock fee, the athletic participation fee, our DVOLP fees that we charge to students for tuition. And all of the fees are set fees that have not changed from last year. We're bringing them forward at the same amounts that we did last year. The only fee that's not a set fee is the language that we put for the extracurricular activities. Those are the ones that typically coincide with our tax credit monies. And we have the language for that anywhere from $1 up to, but no more than the actual cost of the activity. With that as well, and what you will see in the board book is that you also grant us principals the ability to waive that fee for any student for which it's a hardship. And that's specific to the to the extracurricular activity fee. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. But tonight we're just bringing this for preview, and we plan to bring it back at the June 23rd meeting for approval.
Mrs. O'Brien?
Does the waiving of the fee apply only to field trip, or does it apply to the athletic participation fees as well?
The athletic participation fee would be included in that as well, as it is a qualifying extracurricular activity.
And what about co-curricular activities like band? Would that also fall into this category?
Any of our extracurricular activities that collect tax credit monies, they would have to be able to waive that fee for any student for which it's a hardship.
Okay, thank you.
Miss Tweedy?
Is there a standardized process for how hardship's determined?
We do have a specific process for the athletic participation fee. There's an actual application that was designed when we first put the fee into place. And it is meant to go through the principal, and they would have the final approval, and that's who the board actually grants the authority to waive the fee.
Could you just provide us some information on that process? I guess my concern with it being just totally discretionary is if principals weren't using the same criteria and one person was considered a hardship and one wasn't.
So we just want to make sure we've got a uniform
equitable
form.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Could you send us
And it
that?
would be a great time for us to look at that form and revise it if need be, but we can include that in the next Friday update.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Mrs. Reed?
If possible, I would love to get some information, what some of the costs actually are for some of the schools and the different co-curricular and extracurricular activities. So it doesn't have to be everything, but just kind of a sampling. So what typically does it cost to play football? What typically does it cost to be in marching band?
Are you referring to what the actual band director or football program wants, or are you referring to or what the individual booster clubs require? Because that I can tell you is much different everywhere.
I would like to get some more information as what or clarification, I should say. I understand what we charge for athletics, but what do we typically charge for other extracurricular, co-curricular? So is there a charge to be in a performing arts choir? Is there, just to get a little bit more? I mean, I know what I pay for my students. I don't know what other students around the district pay for, or what other parents around the district pay for their students. And my concern is that with some of the financial hardships that families have had over the last couple of months, I want to ensure that that we're being fiscally responsible on our parents' behalves, that we aren't asking too much, I guess.
Well, I guess that a piggyback on your question, because I guess I've been told by parents, and I don't know if it's true, that not all schools charge the same amount for different activities. So I guess you're not just asking like one example of, say, cheer. Would we want to know what all the high schools are charging to see if they're different from high school to high school? Because I would be interested in that.
Right. So what we're really looking for is the Deer Valley. I'm the band leader, or I'm the cheer coach, or I'm the whomever. But we want to separate between what booster charges. There are two totally different things. One side should pretty much line up. The other sides don't line up at all. So I think that might be what we want.
Can I make a suggestion that we have this as a future agenda item to discuss?
Sure.
And I think I can add a little additional information as well. You will find different fees charged at the school level because it's based on the activities that they choose to do throughout the year. A lot of those fees that they charge are specifically for additional travel, going to Disneyland, doing the music studios in Disneyland, going to summer camps, summer skill building camps. Um, there's a myriad of, including matching warm ups depending on what activity it is. And we've done some limited studies, I believe, in the
We
past on some of those
we
fees and
did
what they are by.
recently.
Mhm.
What, like 2 years, maybe 3 years ago. It was a little bit difficult to get the information because you're getting it from people that don't actually
Correct.
give it to you.
Correct.
But as close as you can would be great. And booster clubs are not required to give us all information, I don't think. So that's why I said sometimes it's difficult. Anyway,
Correct.
Could I,
I know yours was awesome, the American History Booster Club. I'm just saying. So sometimes
I
trying
don't know
to
that
get
we
the
were
information
awesome.
is difficult.
Um,
No,
no,
doesn't
we.
matter what the charge was. My point was is that it was open and shared. People knew what they were paying for the booster, and they knew what the charge was from the district. That's all I'm saying.
To your that point about the difficulty of getting information, and maybe I'm naive, but I guess I don't understand why that is difficult if the okay, I'm just going to stop there and say I look forward to having this
Maybe we
be a
can have
future
that in the
topic
board.
item and we can have an update and agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. We will.
Yeah, it'll be too long.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh,
Okay, that was wonderful.
that was fun.
A remote by chance.
Expenditure budget.
Yep.
Since we're all anxious to move out of 2020 and into 2021.
Here we go. You could say it.
Well, I am actually going to start this presentation, and I will tell you that we've been teeing this one up for quite a while, and we're going to take a couple practice swings here at the next two board meetings. This process actually started, for me, it actually starts usually in about October, preparing the new budget book that we will see at the next board meeting, working with human resources on staffing. Human resources starts with staffing in January. About that same time, Mr. Miglorino and I are working with the district budget committee and the governing board to set our budget priorities for the next coming fiscal year. And all through the school year, we are working with the negotiation solutions team to determine what their recommendations will be for salaries and additional changes. The proposed budget actually has a very specific time frame. When I say these are a couple practice swings, the final has to be approved by July 15th, which is it's a month away. So we've got one more meeting between now and then, and we have very specific time frames as far as publishing the adopted proposed budget and some additional information that we will see later in the presentation. So tonight we're going to have a preview. We are going to present the preview to be approved, to be advertised at the next board meeting, and then at July 14th we will ask for the FY21 budget to be approved. I work in 3 fiscal years constantly. I can never keep my years straight. We do have some of the things that we've been reporting all along through the reports from the negotiated solutions team and through the salary recommendations is that we do get to, thanks to our voters, we do get to continue our 15% M&O override. At this time, we are looking at about 1.77% inflationary increase to our M&O, and current year funding provision is included. And we are projecting no change in our student enrollment from the 100th day of 1920 school year. 1920, yes, 1920, 2020, or 2019, 2020. The one negative that we have for the entire budget is that our teacher experience index for the second year in a row is going down just a little bit. And the unfortunate part about that as well is we don't know if it's because our TEI is going down or if the state experience level is increasing. So it's a combination of those two things that cause us to either increase or decrease our TEI. And we are seeing an increase to Proposition 123 this year. There's going to be an additional $50 million to schools, and as we discussed earlier, about a 2.25 projected carry forward as well. Additional highlights including that we did not change our budget staffing size. So these are the standards that we use for budgeting. And I think we've had a couple conversations about budgeting and class size. So this really is a tight number that we use for staffing. It might not be what we actually see in the classroom. Our district additional assistance, or what we use for our capital, this year is being cut by at least 2.4 million, or 15% of the allocation that we actually should be receiving. We'll see a little bit later that that's less of a cut than we've received in the past 12 years. So even though it's a cut, for us, it's quite a bit of a celebration. Continued use of cash accounts. We have our 5 cash accounts that we expect about $2.8 million to help us with our M&O budget. And as we just talked about our athletic participation fees and our parking fees, we would see about $300,000 and $100,000 for those two budgets respectively to help offset our M&O as well. We are including a projection of $500,000 of adjacent ways for a traffic signal at transportation. Adjacent ways is just an additional budget that is added to our budget capacity, taxed separately from capital and the other budgets that we have. And we will see the impact of that later in the presentation as well. That budget can only be used for safe ingress and egress from our facilities, so it's very specific on what it can be used for. And being able to do that helps make sure that we can free up our district additional assistance to use for the capital needs that we have for the district. What all of that means is a net increase of our budget limit from about 2.34 million in FY20 to 240. I can't. That's just it. It's past my bedtime. Sorry, folks. 234.3 million in 20 to 247.1 million in FY21. So what we're looking at is about a 2.2 increase in ADM, 6.88 increase from that inflation, 2.47 increase in that district additional assistance, and the additional 50 million statewide in the Prop 123 for us is 725,000. You did ask us in prior board meetings to begin thinking about what happens if our enrollment is not consistent as we're projecting for next year. So Mr. Miglarino and I have started to gather some categories and begin that preparation. And we believe that there's the potential to have additional carry forward that would help us. Using those cash accounts, we try to limit the amount that we use in cash accounts because it is a component that's looked at when we sell our bonds. It's part of our bond rating, and it would look unfavorably if we use too much. And if we use too much in one year, then what's our fallback plan for the following year as well? Reserve balances, specifically with Valley Schools and our Employee Benefit Trust, if there's any of those reserve balances that we can use to help offset M&O for the next year. We've also identified federal grants such as the CARES funding, which we know now that we're going to receive about $3.6 million. And we have not obligated any of those funds yet at this time. We want to make sure we go slow and steady and put them really in the best place, the best use for those, but we will have those to help us as well. And I think one of the most unfortunate parts of declining enrollment is that you also need fewer staff members. So those staffing changes commensurate with the student decline would also alleviate some of the budget considerations for enrollment if it decreases. What that looks like for line by line, basically, this is just not gym font of the front page of the budget book, and it's everything that we just said in those former slides, just in a spreadsheet. So that's how we get to the 241.78 million for our general budget limit. We do have some budget recommendations that are in the budget proposal that have not been previously approved by the board. Specifically, we have the apprentice reclassifications that come on an annual basis. through the program that we have to hire folks as apprentice and train them to become journeymen, because unfortunately, even with some of the raises that we've been able to give in the past few years, our salary comparative to the public workforce or private workforce isn't enough. We usually can't bring those journeymen in right off the street. So we really like the Grow Your Own. And so we've got some of those apprentice reclassifications this year. District office reclassifications and new M&O funded positions are also included. And I believe all of these positions have been provided to you in previous board updates, and we have the detail for you at your desks today as well. And in that was included some additional positions that would not be funded out of M&O, including some of the future positions for the Student Support Services Department. Salary increases provided for all employees are a total of $8.8 million, with 5% for certified, 5% for professional, 4% for the other 3 employee groups. We have an increase of 38.4 certified staff due to Union Park and student growth. We have a 1.0 net of admin due to Union Park. We had previously reported that we had 2, but we have a lot of positions in our budget book that are funded by grant funds. And while doing some very detailed work to make sure we narrow down that budget, I found one that had not been removed from the budget for its grant funding. So it was a net of just 1 that we're actually adding to M&O once we moved that one over. An increase of 37 classified staff due to special education paraprofessionals and, of course, Union Park as well. Non-staffing increases to our budget include a slight increase to Arizona State retirement from 12.11 to 12.22%. We are increasing our utilities budget this year. Part of that is because of Union Park. We are also expecting an increase to APS utilities. And we did see a slight increase to some of our waste disposal this year that I think we mentioned at one of the earlier board meetings as well. Slight increase to our property liability insurance, and part of that, again, is due to Union Park adding additional square footage to insure, and an increase in our workers' compensation contribution. Our capital budget for FY21 has been established at $9.8 million of the total district additional that we are receiving. District additional assistance that we are receiving. Here is a graphic that I need to give credit to Mr. Migliorino for. This shows over time from 2008 until 2021, the cumulative reductions, state-imposed reductions in our district additional assistance. Started with the economic downturn in 2008-2009 and consistently grew and were maintained until 2019, FY19, when the state began to reinstate some of those. At one point this year, we were hopeful that we were going to receive a full restoration in advance of the promised 2023 restoration. We may then receive the full restoration in FY22, but we will have to wait, of course, until next year to see if that happens. I think it's important to note on this slide that even though we've put a dollar value to the reductions, the $114.7 million, that's money that we will not see coming back to our capital. So when we have those restorations, it's on an annual basis only. And of course, there's no opportunity to make up any of the state-imposed reductions that we received over the last 12, 13 years. And with that, I'm going to let Mr. Migliorino talk about the really fun world of our tax rate implications from the budget.
Yeah, so the next 3 slides, I think I can summarize in the that we feel like the tax rate is going to be minimally impacted for next year, and I'll just kind of, just in the interest of time, briefly go through this. Probably 30 to 40 minutes it'll take. Just kidding.
I choose 30 instead of 40.
Yeah. One of the things that we do not have control over is what happens with the assessed valuation in our district. It did grow it is limited, as is shown on this slide, from a voter approved initiative back in 2012. But the net assessed valuation grew 5.2%. So it's over $2.9 billion for our district. That sounds like a lot of assessed valuation relative to other districts. It depends on which direction you go, right? If you go to the west, our assessed valuation per student looks very good. If you go to the east, our assessed valuation per student looks pretty low. We're probably middle of the pack, I'll say, when it comes to our North Valley neighbors. It is a little bit of art when it comes to forecasting the tax rate at this time. This is really just a forecast. I know Ms. Frank asked about polishing up the crystal ball earlier. We're still working on that for all sorts of things, including the tax.
So magic 8 ball for tax rate.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I didn't even know about the magic 8 ball. I'm just learning about that here tonight.
Oh, so you'll have some. Yeah, you can work on that tomorrow.
But he's been holding out on us. But we are predicting that the primary tax rate is going to go down a penny, and the secondary tax rate is going to go up just over 2 cents. So a net impact of 1 penny on the tax rate. So again, we're projecting that it would be a very minor impact. So of the $51, that's a 5.3% increase. 4.9% of that happens to be all due to assessed valuation. So an increase in the value of the property, which again we don't control. I'm trying to click on my screen and well, no, she's got the clicker. That's fine. There's only 3 slides. So really, the primary tax is what funds our operational needs. It is equalized. I won't get into all this, but the qualifying tax rate does get set by a state adjustment. So we don't control that either. So that's what causes some of the difference between the tax rate that we have because it is equalized. On the secondary side, that's a fixed schedule that we have. Think of this as like a mortgage payment or a car payment, if you will. And so that's a schedule. When the assessed valuation goes up, it helps to mitigate the cost of that because you're distributing that expense over a greater wealth of the property owners. And then the next slide is just our attempt to show what this looks like for the average assessed parcel. So you can see in 2019, the average assessed parcel was $213,000. That wouldn't be the market value of the home. That's about 80% of what market would be. That's just kind of a rule of thumb. In 2020, that jumps to 223,000. So there you can see the 4.9% difference or increase. They would have paid $977 in tax year 2019. It would increase to $1,028. That's the 5.3% or $51 that I mentioned earlier. And at the top of the slide, you can see the difference between the tax rate itself. So again, this is just a projection because all of the information that we've talked about previously does affect how the tax rate would be impacted. And we are very conscious of trying to make sure that we have a level tax rate for our taxpayers every year. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Ms. Mock to talk about the truth in taxation.
And so as mentioned earlier, we would like to put before the board when we present the budget for adoption $500,000 in adjacent ways. And this is an additional tax. And even though we've actually had adjacent ways tax for the past it's pretty consistent for us because we always have, whether it's a remodel project, a school modernization or a project like this, or even building the new school. I think for the past 5 years consistently, we have approved the adjacent ways. For FY20, the amount approved was $500,000, and that impact was 1.812 cents per 100,000 on a residence. We are asking for $500,000 again this year. And this is the notice that we actually would be publishing in the Republic for our community as well, to see that this would take it to the truth in taxation notice that would be published would show that we had $1.7224 per $100,000 for our residents. So because of the increase in the net assessed value, the dollar amount is actually going down per $100,000. The notice is statutory language. We cannot change the notice in the language in the notice. And so no matter how many years in a row that we have had the truth in taxation, the adjacent ways tax for our taxpayers, this notice will read that without it, their taxes would have been zero. But overall, it actually is a decrease from what they saw in their taxes this year.
And I just wanted to make sure that we're clear that $1.72 per $100,000, that's the annual amount.
Mm-hmm.
So on the average assessed valuation home, it'd be less than $3.50 for the year. For all 12 months, right? That just for the adjacent ways portion. So it's, that's not, when we talk about tax rate, a lot of times you have to multiply the tax rate times a formula to get the annual amount, as was shown in the example that we gave for the comparison between the two average costs. But this is the actual annual amount is $1.72 for the year on $100,000.
That's almost a Starbucks.
No, it's not. We can get Starbucks.
Is that all? Almost.
Just the frosting.
Well, I get the tea. I don't get the coffee with all the junk added to it.
It is too. Okay, so would it be rude if I said, is that it?
For comments, that is it. No,
That is a
you are-
comment. Would it be rude? No. So anything that we have, we can email to your favorite cabinet member. And we will.
Move to adjourn the meeting.
Don't you want to
Second.
talk to your usual future meeting thing?
Nope.
Mrs. O'Brien? Does someone want to second that?
I did.
All those in favor say
Aye.
aye.
Aye.